What's going on, guys? This is Dave Heilman, aka Dynasty Dorks, and this is the SGPN Fantasy Football Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/SGPN. Use code SGPN for your first time deposit, and you'll get a match up to $100. We're also brought to you by Hall of Fame Bets, the sports betting research platform for parlays, player props, and game lines. Download the Hall of Fame Bets app or visit HOFBets.com. Use promo code SGPN to get 50% off your first month and start making smarter bets today. Don't forget about the MMA Gambling Podcast. Just launched their YouTube channel to celebrate. We're giving away an MMA Gambling Podcast hoodie. Head over to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/MMA hoodie for all the details. All right. Well, happy Halloween. Hope everybody's trick-or-treating was great. Don't forget about the dad tax. Dad tax is key. Those Reese's, we gave you life. You give us Reese's.
Oh, dude. White chocolate tree Reese's. That's what I just had 3 of because my kids don't like them. They were phenomenal.
Well, everyone, orange juice with any chocolate is amazing. So yeah, try it out. Ooh. If you ever had the orange Oreos,
all right,
change your life.
Really?
So NFL trade deadline, that changed a lot of people's lives. And so we're going to talk about that. Then we're going to talk about the rookies. We've had a lot. This week was a lot of breakouts for rookies. We've seen a lot of different and also what's the 101 of Halloween candy? Jamie, what's the 101 of Halloween candy, everybody? We saw a lot of people change their value this week. And so we're going to talk about some of that. I got an article out on my top 48 2023 rookies and where their values stand right now. Also, their previous ADP. Nerds as the 101. That's a good one. That is a good one.
Oh, yeah.
Reese's. Yeah, Jamie. There we go. So, Brad, let's recap the moves that happened today. And so we're going to not talk too much about them, but just the big moves. Chase Young to the 49ers, Montez Sweat to the Bears. Reminder, the owner of the 76ers is also the owner of the Commanders. So trust the process is his process. Josh Dobbs to Vikings. We kind of saw the tea leaves yesterday when it was announced Clayton Tune was going to be the starter against Cleveland. I like Clayton Tune, but I hate that for him.
I love it.
Josh Dobbs to the Vikings. Kirk Cousins out with an Achilles injury, out for the year. Also free agent next year. That changes the Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison outlook. Then you have Ezra Cleveland to the Jaguars, a very good guard, goes to Jaguars. That's key for that entire offense. Donovan Peoples-Jones goes to the Lions. He's from Detroit, Michigan guy. Rasul Douglas to the Bills. Leonard Williams to the Seahawks. Brad actually predicted that one last week. I was very happy. The fact we got a second and a future
and a
fifth.
Yeah.
We had to pay. We had to pay the salary, so we got a better pick. I'm glad we did it. Kevin Byard to the Eagles. The rich get richer. So there's a few players that did not get moved, and that affected people as well. So if you made a move trying to get ahead of the game, I mean, Tyjae Spears was a guy that I was really like, man, go trade for Tyjae now before it's too late. Hopefully you didn't spend a whole lot if you did. Marvin Mims is another guy. Antonio Gibson is someone that we were hoping that he could go find somewhere where they actually appreciate him and like him. There were some rumors that he was going to get moved. Baltimore seems like they need a running back. It was like, man, it's a perfect fit. Nada. So, Brad, anybody out there as far as the trade deadline, as far as biggest winner?
Biggest winner? Oh, my God. I'm going with the San Francisco 49ers. And you got Nick Bosa on one side, and you just added Chase Young to the other on an already really, really good defensive line that's just going to help your secondary even that much more. So I think the ability for that team to go and get Chase Young for a 3rd-round pick is it's stealing. It's stealing candy from a baby, just like we talked about how all these awesome draft picks and just stellar, talented rookie players continued to fall into the lap of the Philadelphia Eagles. And you've heard the narrative. It's a strike back and forth. Philadelphia Eagles strike and go get Kevin Byard from the Tennessee Titans. And then San Francisco 49ers strike and say, okay, fine, I'm going to go get Chase Young. And they're like, oh, yeah, hang on a minute. We're not done. And they go back and make yet another trade to try to one-up the 49ers. And it's just, I think it's good. It's good for football. It's good to see these players move into situations they really like for. But what about a loser? Do you have a loser, Dave, that's kind of, you're like, oh, what is going on here?
Yeah, as far as losers, I mean, I think Devontae Adams is a loser. He didn't get traded. We saw what happened last night.
Hey, thank you for that, because I was down 13 or 16 with Jahmyr Gibbs versus Devontae Adams, and that 1 for 11 did me great. And Jahmyr Gibbs exploding ended up with a win. It was beautiful. So thank you, Las Vegas Raiders, for that win.
Yeah, Antonio Gibson. Everybody else was getting traded except for him. Like, they dislike this guy so much that they're gonna keep him on the roster. Like, so he must have slept with somebody's girl, because I mean, something is up. They hate him. So, Jamie, for your question, I don't think they invested enough that really shows that they'll extend him next year, but they could. This is a Marvin Jones replacement. Khalif Raymond also got banged up the other day. But really, this is, replacing Marvin Jones with DPJ, and he could earn himself a contract. They got plenty of cap space. They got the room. I actually predicted them adding a receiver, but I thought they'd go a little bit bigger than somebody like a DPJ. I thought they would actually go and get somebody and pay up to get somebody. But, they do like those field stretchers. He's a big-bodied receiver that goes on the outside, take that Marvin Jones role, and really could be the third option there behind Laporta and Amon-Ra St. Brown. But, yeah, I think, Dalvin Cook was upset with what's going on. He's still there. So, like, there's a lot of losers in this one because people just didn't get traded. So, like, Marvin Mims is a loser because he didn't see anybody leave. Tyjae Spears didn't see Derrick Henry walk out the door. Another winner would be Tony Pollard. He didn't get any serious competition. I thought he could be someone that got like a Derrick Henry or a Deonta Foreman or somebody there that could, lighten the load, but also hurt his value a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's, there's a couple other ones. The surprising thing to me is the Chicago Bears going and getting Montez Sweat in a contract year, where now they're going to have to pay him in a contract when they let go of Roquan Smith. Well, not let go, but traded him. Like, it's a very odd situation to me. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to go from an all-pro linebacker to an all-pro defensive line. It's just a weird kind of scenario to me. Another one that I think is a winner is Will Levis. Will Levis, because they said, you know what? We're not going to just offload everybody and look to next year. We're going to leave Will Levis with some growth opportunity with DeAndre Hopkins, a security blanket while he learns the game, and a guy like Derrick Henry behind him. So while, yeah, it sucks for Tyjae Spears, maybe there was a glimmer of hope that Treylon Burks was going to be the guy again. But I think Will Levis is a winner just because the Tennessee Titans didn't just decide to completely blow it up right off the bat. From a DPJ perspective, I kind of like it. I do. Now, I don't think he's going to go in there and be, this big offensive weapon for the Detroit Lions. But you got to remember, this guy was an 800-yard receiver last year in a Cleveland Browns offense that was led the majority of the year with Jacoby Brissett. And he's kind of fallen down, obviously, with the addition of Elijah Moore with a second-round pick. They got to get him on the field. Amari Cooper is the one, and just kind of the debacle that is the passing offense for the Cleveland Browns right now. But I think he can find himself a role in Detroit. He's not a big separator, but, you talked about Marvin Jones. He's a very similar style of player. He's much more athletic than Marvin Jones, but he's not a guy that creates a bunch of separation. He wins with speed, and he can do some contested catches. So I do think he could end up popping here or there for the Detroit Lions and end up getting himself a little bit of a contract to stay in there next season.
Yeah, and from a team build perspective, I like what the Bears did with that. I did not like the Chase Claypool move. That was stupid. You don't pay a high or mid second round pick when all of these cheap, good receivers are coming out of the draft. And I like the idea of not paying an off the ball linebacker $100 million. And so, yeah, I like that move. Thanks, man. That's what I was going for. And, and as far as you're not going to get a Montez Sweat in the second round. And so I can understand that a little bit. You can get off the ball linebackers in the second or third round. You can get Chase Claypool in freaking seventh round probably, but you can't get Montez Sweat. And so I understand the move a little bit better. Invest in the trenches, not in the other places. But Brad, we definitely got to tell people more about Prize Picks.
Oh, absolutely. And with the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League, a league created specifically for combo projections that include 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. So let's say all this hype and all this talk about Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift and the Swifties. You could take Travis Kelce, but then you can pair him up with LeBron James at a 10.5 combo of 3 points made plus receptions. So Travis Kelce gets 5 receptions. LeBron James makes 6 3-pointers. Boom. 11 is your combo, and you have more points than necessary. You also have this really cool option to play alongside some of the Prize Picks favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz. You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to review entries from some of the biggest names in Prize Picks community each week. Prize Picks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. Pretty sweet deal. So for football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second half, that player is what's called rebooted. And Prize Picks is currently the only daily fantasy sports platform with that injury insurance policy. So go to prizepicks.com/SGPN and use our promo code SGPN for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/SGPN, code SGPN. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy.
Don't forget about the MMA. Don't forget about our MMA podcast. The Gambling Podcast just launched their YouTube channel. In honor, they're giving away the MMA Gambling Podcast hoodie to one lucky winner. Head over to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/MMA hoodie to submit your entry today. Make sure you subscribe to the MMA Gambling Podcast on YouTube. So, Brad, let's get into the rookies. I think we've covered that enough. As far as the rookies, Superflex draft, who is your 101?
Oh, I mean, come on. Do we really need to have that conversation? I don't think enough has happened, negatively speaking, where Bijan Robinson is not currently the 101, even in Superflex leagues. I know the argument is going to be made for Anthony Richardson, but we've seen him play, 4 games and get hurt in every single one of them. And I know the upside is massive with him, but in order for him to have some longevity in the league, he is going to need to change his style of play. He is not going to be able to go head-to-head. He's not a twitchy, really fast athlete. He's just really instinctive. So he's taken a lot of hits, and he's taken some big hits already. So I'm rolling with Bijan Robinson, running back for the Atlanta Falcons, even with the silliness that is the Atlanta Falcons not just feeding him the rock 30 times a game.
Yeah, and so if you could pull up my article that came out on sportsgamblingpodcast.com, you can check it out. I have CJ Stroud as the one. And so Bijan, a little bit shorter of and CJ Stroud, I was not a CJ Stroud guy coming in. But CJ Stroud has shown with a very bad cast that he's a very good quarterback. I know he's cooled off a little bit, but his style of play really translates to a longer career than an Anthony Richardson and a running back in Bijan Robinson. So I actually have CJ Stroud as my Superflex 101. And I still would go Bijan in my standard, but I think there's an argument for a receiver, and his name is not Jackson.
Ooh. Look, I had Stroud at 102. That makes sense. I'm totally fine with him being a quarterback at 101 in a Superflex league. I love it. You think number 3 overall or just the number 1 wide receiver?
Well, if you pull up the article, I can show you how I have it. And so,
all right, yeah.
So I have CJ Stroud at the 1 spot.
All right.
And as far as your 2, are you going with CJ Stroud at your 2?
I'm going CJ Stroud at 102. Oh,
okay.
I'm sorry, Superflex or standard?
Superflex.
Yeah, I'm going CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud is my QB1 for sure. Redraft.
Yeah, and as far as when we're talking about going through and all your rookies, there's an argument to make for a lot of these guys to be at the 1 spot. I get it, but for me, it comes down to, I have Puka Nacua at the 102.
Ooh, good and great. Here, I'll share the article here. Let's see if I can get it up. There we go. Let's get down here. Let's see what you got.
So I got Puka Nacua at 102. And what I like here is you look at the preseason ADP, how much value you got there. But you think about Puka Nacua versus the other receivers. He's shown it. Then Cooper Kupp came back, and he's been great. I know he's that one game where he cooled off, but that's it. For a receiver, 1 game where he's not getting 100 yards, it's okay. Like that's pretty normal as long as it's not every other game. And so Puka Nacua over Bijan Robinson, mainly because the positional value as far as being a receiver. We've seen with Bijan that he's one of the best running backs in the game. He's obviously the dynasty running back 1, but we also know how quick that can change, and we know how it doesn't change so quickly with the receivers, and that's why I have Puka at 2. Brad, who's your 3?
My 3 is currently Anthony Richardson, quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. It still hurts me a little bit to have him. I was lower than pretty much everybody coming in. But I think what you see on the field, you cannot deny it. Once you see it at the NFL level, you got to trust it at that point. And so I can't do anybody justice having him any lower than this. He's clearly been a better player than Bryce Young up to this point. He's in an offensive system where Jonathan Gannon, not Shane Steichen and team is really, really molding that offense in a way that Anthony Richardson is going to be successful, period. He's not asking him to do things that he can't do or that he does not trust him to do. He's putting him in situations that work for Anthony Richardson. So he's in really the perfect storm of situations for himself. So I've got Anthony Richardson at number 3.
Yeah, and so you see here, I have Anthony Richardson at 4. Again, all of the same exact things that you just said. It's a great setup, and you can't take away his superpower, which is his running game. But just like we see with Tua and all these other people, he's going to have to learn, how to fall a certain way, how to protect himself, how to get down, working with guys like Jalen Hurts. Like Jalen Hurts, you can see where he knows when to go out of bounds, when to slide, when to take the hit, when not to. And yeah, sometimes you are going to have to take the hit, but it's not every single time. It's 1 out of every 10 runs. And it's when you need to go into the goal line or you need to go get that first down. It's live to fight another day versus trying to get those extra 2-3 yards. He'll learn that. He's young. He's also a very big guy. So he should be a little bit more durable. It just, it was a bad get with that hit. I mean, it's just the way he fell. It just wasn't good. Yep. But I did drop him a little bit because of the same things. I mean, we saw with Cam Newton. Like Cam Newton, he's younger than like Matthew Stafford and Kirk Cousins and these guys that are still playing. He's been out of the league for like 4 years. You just cannot sustain that. And so people that see quarterback and think, oh, this guy's going to be in the league 20 years. No, like unless he learns how to play a different style, like granted, all quarterbacks can get hurt. I get it. Joe Burrow's pocket passer, he gets hurt. Matthew Stafford gets hurt. But it's more likely with these guys that they're going to get some of these injuries that really, shut their career down by 30. And so that's why I have them a little bit lower, but I do love the situation. I love Josh Downs. I love Michael Pittman. It's great.
Absolutely. My number 4, since we've kind of worked through Bijan a little bit, so I do want to get this guy on the board, I think, real quick and ask where you have him, Dave, and that's Jahmyr Gibbs. I have Jahmyr Gibbs at number 4. That moves him up a spot from preseason ADP. He was like 4 to 4.5 in ADP. So where are you at with Jahmyr Gibbs? Are you comfortable with that, or do you have somebody ahead of him in your or in your in-season redraft for the 2023 rookie class?
Yeah, I'm a little bit lower. And we saw the phenomenal usage yesterday, but to give you some credit, there's not been the same usage when David Montgomery's on the field. Yep. And so I do think that those things kind of like they regress to the mean because there's too much David Montgomery, he gets hurt. And so like they want to use David Montgomery 30 times. Well, he gets hurt. He's got hurt, missed time twice this year. And so they go right before the bye week and give Jahmyr Gibbs 31 carries, and he's going to get a bye. And so he's going to get to rest up a little bit. Well, so is David Montgomery. And so when David Montgomery comes back, you're still going to see great stuff. I really, really like Jahmyr Gibbs, and I think his usage could lead to a longer career, but it's just there's so many good players, and with the quarterbacks going ahead of him, and I also have one tight end ahead of him.
Ooh, okay, interesting. We'll get to the tight ends, but before we do that, let's get in. And Dave, you talked about Hall of Fame bets pre-show, but it again is time to win bigger by betting smarter this NFL season with Hall of Fame bets. It is the sports betting analytics platform for parlays, player props, and game lines. You can research every NFL, NBA, MLB, and soccer bet with historical stats and data. Enter any parlay idea into Hall of Fame Bet's revolutionary parlay optimizer tool to get hit rates broken down by leg, as well as expected probability for the entire parlay. You can sort your players by hit rate for any bet to learn which players are hot and which players have values. Stop betting in the dark and join over 30,000 users researching with Hall of Fame Bets to craft more intelligent, data-driven parlays. Download the Hall of Fame Bets app or visit hofbets.com and use code SGPN to get 50% off your first month today. Start researching, start winning with Hall of Fame Bets.
All right, so let's look at the 105. So you said you have Gibbs at the 4?
I've got Gibbs at the 4, correct.
Who's your 5?
So my 5, I'm rolling with the quarterback, and I know I talked a little bit of shade on him, but I'm going to go with Bryce Young. I still think the talent is there. He just needs to be given some help from an offensive line perspective. The running game is not working. The play calling from Frank Reich and team is not really setting him up for success, but you can see him being able to produce at the level, right? It's not what we want, but in reality, what we saw from CJ Stroud the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season, that's not the norm for rookie quarterbacks. What we saw out of Anthony Richardson the first 4 weeks of the season is not the norm for the quarterback position. So that rookie season is always a growing pain season, especially when you look at a roster like the Carolina Panthers and is not great as it is. And when you've got a 35-year-old Adam Thielen who is balling out, that's a rough spot to be in when that's your best player and on the whole squad, and it's not even close. So I still think you can't let these quarterbacks drop too far in a Superflex league. So I'm going to be looking at Bryce Young at the 105.
Yeah, and I got him at the 106. I got JSN at 105. I know it's not been great, but he still, I do believe, has a better situation than some of the guys below him. And we just believe in the talent. And at the end of the day, JSN was everybody's wide receiver 1. I'm not going to bail on him and bury him in the rankings. I'm going to keep him here. But as far as JSN, I got him at the 5 spot, and I do think.
Yeah. So I can understand the JSN perspective. I just had he was the number one for most everybody coming into the season, but for me, I look at the productivity and do we really think that DK Metcalf is not going to be on that team long term? I know we've got maybe a year or two left with Tyler Lockett there as well, but that team has always been a run first team. So when I look at this, I'm actually looking at kind of Jordan Addison as my wide receiver ahead of Jackson's JSN. So I've got Jordan Addison at this spot because of that, just because even with Seattle, I get it. The talent is there with JSN, but DK is there. Tyler Lockett is there. It's a run first offense. Geno Smith. So there's some question marks there that I just don't know that he's gonna get the volume that we want to see there. And we're already seeing the volume with Jordan Addison. We're already seeing how good this guy can be, even with Justin Jefferson on the field. And we haven't really seen that with JSN when everybody's healthy. So I've got them flip-flopped a little. They're right next to each other, and I'm not going to fight either way. But I am a little concerned just around the utilization of JSN when you've got that high of a pick invested in him.
Well, and so Gibbs was great in the fourth quarter against the backups, down 35 against Baltimore.
Yep,
and he got the touchdown. But he didn't really have a great game before that. Like I'm a big Gibbs guy, but those things matter. And Will Levis, we're gonna get to him. He did play already. Remember, he played in London. He got in for like 2 drives.
Yep.
Got sacked 4 times in 6 plays. And so it didn't look good. And it definitely looked really good this weekend. So JSN, I got Bryce Young right there. You have Bryce Young at 5, JSN at 6?
No, I have Jordan Addison at 6.
Addison at 6.
Yep.
And I'm totally fine with that. I think like you said, really everybody in the top 12 is pretty close.
Yep.
This class was, as advertised, very good. And Puka was a big surprise, and so was one of my next guys, which is Devon Achane. But this guy has been a pleasant surprise. Sam Laporta at 7. Laporta, because the positional value is why I put him above Gibbs. It's why the quarterbacks are above Gibbs. I love him. I love Gibbs. I think he's going to have a longer career because of the way he plays than most running backs. I think he is an Alvin Kamara, Aaron Jones type of player. But Fran Tarkenton, Marcus Mariota, Will Levis, it's pretty good crew right there. But Sam Laporta is the Dynasty 101, period. I ran the polls, got the answers, 1,600 votes. It's him over Pitts, him over Andrews, him over Kelsey. Brad, disagree or agree?
I still really like Dalton Kincaid right now. Now, you know, from our time in the offseason, I was high on Laporta early on. I think he was my tight end 2 early on in the draft process. But as that process went on, he moved a little bit further down. I love Sam Laporta. I have nothing negative to say about him. But we've seen Dalton Kincaid the last couple weeks with Dawson Knox on IR. It really come to the forefront a little bit. And we've seen that athleticism, and we're seeing him get more opportunities. And I think the team is going to realize, hey, even when Dawson Knox comes back, we need to make sure this guy is in our offense. We're looking for another piece. Gabe Davis is too inconsistent, and Stephon Diggs is going to do his thing. We need somebody else. And so I've still got Dalton Kincaid just a smidge, little itty bitty hair above Sam Laporta right now. But Sam Laporta is an absolute monster, and he is as advertised coming out of Iowa.
Yeah, and I'd say better than advertised. I mean, this guy was a good player, wasn't great. He was on a terrible offense. Production was okay, but we saw it. Plus, he gave me the first question at his interview, at the media session for the combine, so I got a little bit of love for him. But
I like it.
he was, we've been clear that both those guys were ahead of Michael Mayer for a long time, and this is fantasy football, not football. Michael Mayer is a great tight end, a great player, but he just does not bring what these guys bring. And to be in Detroit with that offense, the perfect setup. And Laporta is the dynasty the tight end 1 for me in dynasty. All right, who do you got next? I got Jahmyr Gibbs next.
Okay. So we're at, let's see, let's scroll you down to number 8 there. You got Gibbs. We've talked about him. For me, number 8, I have Zay Flowers, actually. So I was somewhat low on Zay Flowers, I would say. I did not expect him to get into this offense and immediately cement himself as the number 1 option outside of Mark Andrews. I thought Rashad Bateman would kind of be in that mix, coming back off an injury, being a little bit healthier and having that experience with Lamar Jackson, and that has not come to fruition. I was completely wrong about that, and it is what it is. We can't get him right all the time, but Zay Flowers is really freaking good at football, and he's a guy that knows how to set down in zone. He's a guy that can make you pay in man-to-man coverage, and I think from when you look at the wide receiver landscape for these rookies, he's a guy that can do anything you ask, and I've got him at the number 8 spot overall, which is just a couple spots above what the ADP was in the offseason. He was number 10 in the offseason. He's coming in at number 8 for me now. Now I want to say that's 4 spots above where I had him ranked preseason. I think I had him at number 12 overall. So I just really like the skill set and how it's kind of coming to fruition with Todd Monken and the Baltimore Ravens. And I think you can't really go wrong. Like you said, with any of these 12 guys, you can have them in basically any order almost.
Yeah, I think there's an argument to make for all of them. And for the reason I have some of these guys ahead, like I said, positional value. And with the receivers, I said this pre-draft, and I'll stick by that. And maybe, you could make an argument to drop him down a little bit. Puka's the only one that actually is a 1. Everybody else is a wide receiver 2. And Addison, he's on the border, but like these guys are really kind of like it's hard to see them as top 12, receivers on a weekly basis. They're really good number 2s.
Yeah, that's fair.
And good wide receiver 2s. I know there's a whole lot of wide receiver 2s, but they're young and they're good playmakers. Jeez.
Yep. Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. I get that. He's proven that as the 1, he can do it over and over again. And even in the weeks that Cooper Kupp has returned, he can still produce wide receiver 1 numbers. Hell, he had 150 some odd yards last week, right? So,
so Jordan Addison.
Go ahead.
So Jordan Addison gets Dobbs. We didn't really talk about the trade deadline stuff.
Yep.
Dobbs was able to keep Marquise Brown, and then you have Justin Jefferson coming back soon. With that, we don't know what it is next year. Jaron Hall is there as a potential, a potential starter. Dobbs is going to be there. He's not under contract next year. Kirk Cousins is not under contract next year. And he tore the Achilles in his plant leg. So as far as Cousins, Jaron Hall, Dobbs, we don't know who the quarterback is for Addison or Jefferson next year. What are your thoughts on that and how you rank Addison? How you feel about his outlook?
Yeah, we've seen Dobbs carry a couple guys, right? We saw him in the first few weeks really be able to carry Zach Ertz with a target share. Marquise Brown had some really good games. We saw that offense in Arizona moving. Now, I believe he was in that Pittsburgh's who drafted him, isn't it? Never mind. So to me, I would have expected them to go after a little more experience personally, right? Jacoby Brissett, for instance, comes to mind. A backup quarterback in Washington that's not really playing, they're letting Sam Howell run with the reins right now. So, hey, let's bring in a guy that has been a little bit of a journeyman. I get it, but has a lot of starting experience. And we saw produce when given the opportunity with the Cleveland Browns last year. So I would have expected something a little more like that than Josh Dobbs, but I don't think it's a bad move. Like I said, we saw the first 6 weeks of the season, Josh Dobbs really play a competent offense. And to be honest, it almost looks like the first half every week, he's really, really, really good. And then they go in at halftime and they're like, oh, whoa. We cannot be winning these games. Let's change our strategy to where we're not as good anymore. And then, it really is a tale of two halves with the Arizona Cardinals when you look at it. So I'm curious to see what Kevin O'Connell can do with him. I think the weapons obviously take a little bit of a downgrade, but I still think they are startable assets. If I could move TJ Hawkinson for Sam Laporta, I'd probably be looking to do something like that. If I can move TJ Hawkinson for Dalton Kincaid and a little bit, I'm probably looking to do that right now. TJ Hawkinson, I believe, is a tight end 1 in fantasy football right now. From a redraft perspective, I think he still has age on his side and that production to where you could argue, depending on your league, you might be able to make those moves. So I think TJ is a guy that I'd be looking to kind of move to go get some of these other tier down, if you want to say that. I mean, you just made the argument Sam Laporta's tight end 1 in Dynasty. So, you're not obviously taking TJ Hawkinson for Sam Laporta, but if I can make that deal, that might be what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, and when we talk about tearing down and things like that then if it's not 1 for 1, then, there's obviously room to talk. We'll kind of speed it up a little bit. We got a lot of players to go through, not a lot of time. The next player on my list after Addison is Will Levis. And, he kind of fits right there where he was preseason. But if we had this conversation last week before the game, he probably would have been in the middle of the second round. I mean, everyone knew Ryan Tannehill was not going to make it through this whole season. We talked about it last week. He had 2 touchdowns all season. Well, Will Levis did that by halftime. He's going to be the starter rest of the year. But even then, Tennessee was going nowhere. And it made no sense to keep Ryan Tannehill out there, especially when he's stinking it up. And so he's going to get Traylon Burks back. I mean, this is a nice little setup for Will Levis. And he gets Pittsburgh. It's not the best defense. And so we're going to be able to see him again on this Thursday. And so it's fantasy football is funny, and Dynasty's the same way. You can see things change overnight. And if he goes and stinks it up on Thursday, maybe we're back to the other conversation. But I do think he's solidified. And because of the positional value, you could even argue to have him higher.
Yeah, I've got him at number 10 right now also. He was kind of the consensus number 4, I think, for most people coming into the season. Coming out of Kentucky, there were a lot of questions around decision-making and things like that, but he absolutely looked the part. I think it'll be a very telling thing next week with a really good defensive line between Alex Highsmith and TJ Watt coming at him to see how he kind of manages that situation, right? Because he did have a tendency to get a little happy feet and make really bad decisions in those type of situations when he was at Kentucky. So I'm hoping that he's been coached up a little bit. Hey, we're going to have a good game plan, maybe short, quick passes to get TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith under control initially, and then use that to set up that long game. So we'll see how it goes. But it could be a very challenging week, I think, with the Pittsburgh Steelers on hand against a kind of subpar offensive line. So,
yeah, I mean, they talked about him during the pre-draft process about they said sometimes he was courageously stupid, where he was really he would stand there in the face of everybody coming after him and not afraid to take a hit. But sometimes you throw the ball away, man. You can't take those hits all game. Devon Achane is my 11th, and I missed on this one. I was definitely, and don't get me wrong, he's injured. It's the second injury he's had coming back from preseason and now. But he also scored 100 points in 3 games. It's hard to ignore that this guy could easily outscore. He could be the RB1 on the week, any given week. And in a small sample size, I mean, he's never played more than 50% of snaps. And he scored 4 touchdowns in 1 game. I mean, he is just lightning in a bottle, and he's in a perfect situation there in that explosive offense. And all the things that people said that I thought they were dreaming about are true. The only problem is he can't stay healthy, and that's why I got him at 11.
Yeah, so I have him at 12. I was looking at PFF today on my break, saw it's not even close. If you look at the elusive rating for the running back position, he's at a 300. Then you got Tyjae Spears next up at number 2 at 195. Then you've got Raheem Mostert at 122, and this is based on a minimum number of attempts also, just a side note. So I'm sure if you just go in there without filtering that, you've got some guys that have had 2 carries, and it's astronomical, but I filtered those out. Then you've got Kenneth Walker at 98. I mean, he's on another freaking level, dude. It is nuts to me. And as good as I saw Jahmyr Gibbs last night look, it pales in comparison to what we're seeing Devon Achane do on the field when he's healthy. So it's pretty impressive what we're seeing from him. Like you said, I don't think really there were some, I'll call them truthers out there, but there were a lot of people out there saying, hey, this guy's really freaking good. You cannot sleep on him. And we're like, okay, yeah, I get it, but he's kind of small. Is that really going to work? And Mike McDaniels is making it work. That's for sure. So I think he definitely belongs in the first round of any kind of rookie redraft that you're looking.
We had Pat Fitzmaurice on the show, and he said he was like work done, or like Chris Johnson. And work done, was somebody who's a smaller back, was really good balance and good on the inside. And then you have Chris Johnson, which was CJ2K. But yeah, I wish we could see like fantasy points, like as they're running down the field, to see them populate, because he'd be like Sonic when you're collecting rings. Cause
I love it.
I feel like when he touches the ball, I'm just seeing like, cause I'm always playing against him because I don't have enough of them. And I'm like, seeing like, damn, that was 3 points. Damn, that was 5 points. Like he's racking up like 4 or 5 points a run.
Every run,
off a 70-yard touchdown. Like I have 13 points. So the next guy got Zay Flowers, and I've been the Zay Flowers guy, and I hate to bury him like this. It feels like I'm actually hating on him. It's just I really like those other guys ahead of him, and he's just in that like. There's such a pile of guys in that spot between like wide receiver 10 and wide receiver 30, and he's just stuck in the middle there. Where the other guys, it's positional value, and that's why I got him a little bit lower. But I love Zay Flowers. I love the fact that he put on some weight and still kept the speed. I love that he's not playing exclusively in the slot. He really is the alpha in that offense. And it was day one. I mean, week 1, he was the target hog, and he's got at least 5 touches in every single game. They're either doing a sweep or they're doing a bubble screen. They're targeting. Sometimes he's getting double-digit targets. And he is he's the primary target there with Lamar Jackson is a good quarterback. So I like the spot there for Zay Flowers, and I really think the Chargers are frustrated that they took Johnston over Zay Flowers, and I'm a little bit too, because I think he'd be phenomenal there. But yeah, Zay Flowers is good.
Yep. So I had Zay Flowers up at number 8. I had Devon Achane at 12. So just to move my top 12, the guy in there I had at number 11 that we haven't actually talked about is going to be Dalton Kincaid. And this, like I said, it's once we saw Dawson Knox go out on IR, we've seen Dalton Kincaid get significantly more involved in the offense and look the part the last 2 weeks. So I expect there to be more of that. We've got a minimum of 2 more weeks while Dawson Knox is on the IR. So, and like I said, I think the team is going to realize, hey, even when Knox is back, this guy needs to be more and more involved in the offense for sure. So for me, I've got Dalton Kincaid inside that top 12 as well.
And all these guys were my guys in the pre-rankings, and Brad's higher on them now. It's making me sad. So my 13th guy is Dalton Kincaid. And it took a little while, but we saw it. And what I wrote up in my article was, we put some unrealistic expectations on Kincaid. And, don't get me wrong, Sam Laporte is hitting all of them. He's been a tight end one every single week. But that is very abnormal. Like, that's freakish level stuff. That's Mike Ditka, Kyle Pitts rookie year, and that's it. Dalton Kincaid has been on a very above average pace. And the last 2 weeks, we've seen him go nuts. And this week we actually saw it, and we saw it on Thursday night, which was even better. But Dalton Kincaid's good. He's a good receiver, He's a good running back, good tight end. And he's really just a big receiver. And so he is a little bit older than Laporta, and that's something to consider. He's an older prospect, but not much older. We're talking about 25 and 22. But Kincaid is in a great spot there with Josh Allen. Gabe Davis, free agent next year. Stephon Diggs, a little bit older. Like, this offense could run through Kincaid here in the next couple of years, and he's just getting started. So I'm super excited about him. I think all of these guys that all my top 13, I would trade a 24 first for. At least one. You're going to have to trade a couple for those other guys, the top guys.
Yeah, I'd be on board with that. That makes sense to me. Yep. All right, who you got at 14, Dave? Let's see.
At 14, I got Josh Downs.
Tied up at 14. I like it.
Yeah, and so Josh Downs was a guy that I compared to Tyler Lockett when we did our series. And he goes in the slot, and he is Gardner Minshew's dude. When you look at first read targets, it goes to Josh Downs, not Michael Pittman. You look at man versus zone, Josh Downs is the guy. And Josh Downs, not only is he getting the targets, but he's getting the production. He's catching the ball down the field. He's taking these slants or little, like, smaller routes, and he's taking them down the field. But he's also got a few deep shots. And so I like the way they're using him at all three levels. And the volume is just, you can't ignore it. And, some of these younger quarterbacks, a slot receiver is their best friend because they're closer to the line of scrimmage. And so I think Downs could be even better. Right now, I think he's wide receiver 51. It's not like crazy, but he's been really good the last few weeks, and it's really happened. It's unlocked with Gardner Minshew. So there might be a little pause for concern there because it's not Anthony Richardson, but I just think his role in this offense is defined. And when Anthony Richardson comes back, he's still going to be the dude.
Yeah. With what we're seeing from Gardner Minshew, I'm just going to throw the ball. And Shane Steichen's letting him do that. We saw in week 3 when Anthony Richardson went out against Baltimore, Josh Downs ended up with 12 targets. Here recently, he's had 8 targets a few weeks ago. He had 9 targets this week against New Orleans. And like you said, they're using him in all 3 levels of the field. So you could see a game that is 7 catches for 50 yards, or you can see 5 catches for 130 yards. You're seeing a little bit of everything, and it's really based on the game plan. So it's really nice to see that no matter what the game plan is, Josh Downs is very involved in it. And he's another one of those guys that just knows how to create separation. He's currently right now the number 6 ranked PFF wide receiver. And you could pull a couple of these guys out like Jake Bobo and Demario Douglas, who haven't played a ton of snaps, which would bump him up to number 4 behind Puka Nacua, Rashee Rice, and Tank Dell right now from a PFF receiver rating perspective. So I really like Josh Downs and the outlook for him, regardless of who the quarterback is and the health of that position.
Yeah, and he's wide receiver 11 since Minshew took over.
Yep.
16.6 PPR points a game. The next guy got Tyjae Spears, and I wrote this article before the trade deadline, and I put in there this, he could move up or down based on that. And there's no guarantee that the Titans do not bring Derrick Henry back next year, but there's no guarantee they do. And so Tyjae Spears could easily be the lead running back for Tennessee. But he's looked better than Charbonnet, looked better than Kendre Miller. He's looked better than Roschon Johnson. For me, he is the next guy, the fourth running back out of this class. And he's doing it. Like, he's had running back 2 performances while sharing the field with Derrick Henry.
Yep.
And he's actually eating into Henry's, workload a little bit. I just think that he's talk about elusive. He's definitely one of the more elusive players. Brad read that off earlier.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. I've got him one spot below here, but you can see he's getting work with Derrick Henry on the field as well. He's averaging very good yards per carry. The elusivity rating, or the elusive rating for PFF, is really good. He's forcing a lot of missed tackles, whether he's catching the ball or he's running it. He looks good between the tackles. He looks good in the passing game. He's getting all of the work that you want outside of Derrick Henry. There isn't like this third person that is eating into his snaps. And should Derrick Henry go down, knock on wood, we don't wish for that, but if he does, this guy, I believe, is a league-winning type of pickup. So for me, if he is in a redraft league, if he is on your waiver wire, you need to make him not on your waiver wire. He needs to be on your squad, sitting on the bench, waiting for that opportunity. Because it could come the way that Derrick Henry runs at the age that he's at. So I really like this play at 15, even though I've got him at 16.
Yeah, I actually, Jamie, I think I need to redo this whole article. Roschon Johnson's way too low. Tank Dell is my next at 16. He stayed in Houston, gets the home cooking, gets with CJ Stroud. And I love the fact that he's getting to grow up with CJ Stroud. Love what they're doing there in Houston. Really fun team. And they're just getting started. This offensive line has been banged up. They've really only had one healthy starter each of the games this year. Stroud is just getting going. And Tank Dell's, he missed a couple times, some time. And so, his concerns about the size and all that, I get it. But I do think that we need to adjust how we look at these receivers and running backs. Because you look at, Jahmyr Gibbs and Devon Achane and Josh Downs and Jordan Addison and Tank Dell and even Tyjae Spears and go, these guys are way too small to play. No, they're not. They're not too small. And you look at, Devonta Smith really paved the way for these guys. And there's other players that are doing it. It's just a different NFL. And the way they're using players in space, you need these smaller, more agile, with good lateral quickness guys. And yes, they do get banged up sometimes, but so do the other guys. But when these guys are healthy, they're absolutely exploding onto the fantasy scene. My next player is another guy that I was too low on, and is Rashee Rice. I was way too low on Rashee Rice. I put in there the argument between Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney. The answer is Rashee Rice. He's not even played 50% snap. Not a single game where he's played over 50% of snaps. And this guy has got multiple wide receiver 2 finishes. He's being used in the red zone. He is a good receiver, and he gets paired up with Mahomes and Reed, combo like they do with the chicken nuggies. It's a nice little combo there with Mahomes and Reed. And I think Rashee Rice is one of the nicer surprises this year. Some people took him in the second round, and they were eating it up with the whole Kansas City thing. I was a little burned by the Sky Moore stuff and stayed away. And I wish I had more Rashee Rice.
Yeah, I've got him at 18. I've got Tank Dell a little bit lower, but Rashee Rice is a guy that's basically hit my target share report, snap share report article week after week after week for the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season, trying to tell people, look, there's really not a wide receiver on that team that is garnering more of a target share than Rashee Rice outside of Travis Kelce. If they're playing the wide receiver position, Rashee Rice, I believe up to this point, 6 of 8 games has been the target share leader for that team after Travis Kelce. And like you said, that's a guy who's playing 40 to 50% of snaps most weeks. But it's because in those high leverage situations, he's getting the opportunity. When he's on the field, he's getting open and they're relying on him to catch the ball a little bit. We did have some concerns after week 1. I'm not going to lie, right? One of the big concerns for Rashee Rice coming out was, look, he doesn't create a lot of separation. And sometimes he's not catching the ball. He doesn't have great hands. And then week 1, he comes out and he drops a wide open ball on a crosser route. And we never saw him again after that. Then week 2, it started to come back to and he got worked into the offense more and more and more. And he is the number 1 outside of Travis Kelce there from the wide receiver position. I don't think there's any argument to be had there for Rashee Rice.
Anybody we missed there in your top 17, Brad?
I do have Zach Charbonnet up there at 16. So I've got Charbonnet at 16. It's hard for me to drop him from just a talent perspective. We saw how good he was yesterday. I know he's not getting the volume that we want. But hey, if he was getting the volume that some of us wanted, then that would mean Kenneth Walker is not getting volume. And we definitely don't not want that. We want to see him get the volume. So I think he's a good little high value handcuff type of guy, very similar to a Tyjae Spears. I know the situation's a little bit different, that, Kenneth Walker is not going anywhere like we think Derrick Henry is, but I do really like Zach Charbonnet and the 1-2 punch that the Seattle Seahawks kind of use there. So he is in my top 17 right now.
You have a good one, Jamie. Thanks for hanging out, man. If you ever need someone on the pod, I'm glad to guest. And we can talk with Roschon Johnson. I assume that Charbonnet, it would just be too much to take him that far. I don't have him much further, but my next guy is Quentin Johnston. And Quentin Johnston, I was never really high on him. Those guys that are just like, it's kind of why I was lower on Rashee Rice. Talent, is based on, really being faster and bigger than the other guys versus like being a great polished route runner. Those things, it really translates to the NFL a lot better. And the other guys are a step behind. Like everybody else is a freak athlete in the NFL. And so you kind of lose that special tool. But a guy that can separate and run routes, that translates a lot faster and they hit the ground running. Not saying Quentin Johnston can't do it, and he's in a great situation. But what I see when I watch Chargers games, remember that pick they threw at the end of the game the other day?
Yep.
That was Quentin Johnston's only target. And he and Justin Herbert were not on the same page. Quentin Johnston was stopping, and Herbert wanted him to go outside. Well, he stopped. The corner went and picked it off. Herbert threw it where he thought he was going to be, and he wasn't there. And so when you're not where your quarterback needs to go, the quarterback and the coaches are not going to target you. And then you have these drop issues. We're seeing him run behind Josh Palmer. Darius Davis is getting as much run as he is. It's not very bright. And Quentin Johnston right now is a hold. Like you can't really do anything with him if you have him. And maybe he's a buy, but it's hard to buy someone right now that you're going to have to pay up. Someone's just paid a first-round pick for him. They're not going to give him to you for a third. You're going to have to pay at least a second, probably a first for Quentin Johnston, and he hasn't shown you anything that deserves that.
100% agree. He just doesn't – you can see it when you watch the game. He doesn't understand the route tree. He doesn't understand where to set down in zone, where to stop or to continue a route. The timing is off. There's a lot going on there. You hope that Kellen Moore and that offense, that offensive staff can kind of help that situation. He's got one of the best guys in the league at it in Keenan Allen. So you hope that Keenan Allen has kind of helped coach him along a little bit. You hope that Josh Palmer is doing the same because you see Josh Palmer doing a really nice job of this. So you hope there's some development there for him. He has a a good athlete. He's got the measurables to be very good from that athleticism perspective, but there's the mental side of the game that he's just not picking up just yet. So you kind of hope they help pull him along, and it's early, right? There's also, we've gotten spoiled with the first year rookie wide receiver outbreak, breakouts. So, it's not a time to panic, right? There used to be a time not too long ago. I'm old enough to remember that third year breakout was the big thing for wide receivers, right? Not first year breakout. So don't panic with him to where you sell him for a late second just because you're trying to get value. I think, kind of let things work out. He's still tied to one of the best quarterbacks in the league. So I think that's good enough to hold for a little while with him if you invested.
Yeah, I think we can probably rip through the rest. I know we all got to get out of here in hour mark. I got Charbonnet next. I think he's a buy. We've seen him start to get more worked in. He's missed a lot of time with injuries, and his injuries have caused him to not really get a lot of opportunities. He missed a lot of the offseason hurt with a shoulder injury and a groin injury. Then he got healthy. Then he got banged up again. And when you're just rehabbing, you're not practicing. You're not learning the offense. And for a rookie, that's really hard. And Ken Walker's been used like a workhorse, and they're going to have to slow that down. And if they want to rest him a little bit, we can see Charbonnet get a little peak. This weekend was the first time he got 60% more than, or more snaps, and he turned it into some good production. So not the biggest Charbonnet guy, but I do think that that he's a player that you're going to have on your roster. And I got him ahead of the other guys. Wilson, he gets Kyler Murray back, and this guy is playing really well.
He's
Jaden
a buy.
Reed,
He's an absolute buy right now. Michael Wilson is.
Yep. And then Jaden Reed, Marvin Mims, those guys just hold hands in all my rankings. I got Kendre Miller really kind of projecting there that he's going to be the starter. He's another guy that's just missed so much time with injuries that really hasn't been able to do anything. And then Jalen Hyatt, maybe a little bit of a homer pick, but Brad alluded to this last week. This guy's getting a lot more snaps, a lot more involved. And the Giants offense, 7 yards passing last week. We had Danny DeVito at quarterback. It was bad, but it's not going to continue to be that bad. Daniel Jones coming back. Andrew Thomas is coming back. Andrew Thomas has been the big piece. And then you get the rest of the offensive line starting to get healthy. They're going to be better. And Jalen Hyatt is going to be one of the featured pieces in this offense. Now Darren Waller's out. You're going to see him more involved. And if Daniel Jones doesn't work out, they're right now picking at the 4 spot. They could easily go pick up another quarterback next year and get somebody else. But Jalen Hyatt, and he get his higher upside than some of these other players because of the types of targets he's getting.
Yep.
So, Brad, any of those guys, is that still same guys as your top 24? Is Roschon in there?
I have Roschon at 25, so he's just outside. Jonathan Mingo is the guy I've got inside my 24, and he's just outside for you, but you kind of see him overtaken it from an opportunity perspective. DJ Shark, who hasn't been able to stay healthy this year, who I thought was going to kind of be the big target winner for that team coming into this season. I was pretty high on DJ Shark. If he could stay healthy, and he just hasn't been able to do that. But you're seeing Jonathan Mingo get a good target share. I want to say it's been 6 targets in each of the last 3 weeks, and he's turning those into catches. He's got a very good catch percentage on that. Now, Jonathan Mingo is not a guy that's going to give you a ton of yards after the catch. He's not going to give you big explosive plays. He's going to do more that kind of Adam Thielen thing that we're seeing, right, where it's 12 catches for 83 yards and a touchdown, 15 catches for 100 yards. Like, I think that's the type of player you're going to see Jonathan Mingo really develop into, which is a very, very valuable player for both an NFL football team and your fantasy football squad, especially if it's full point PPR. So I really like Jonathan Mingo. That's still significantly lower. Let's see. He was 16 in ADP coming into the season, and now he's down at the 24 spot. So, that's a pretty big fall from grace, really. But I think I could see him move up a little bit as the season wears on, because I think the opportunity is going to be there for him.
Yeah, and to talk about Roschon Johnson, I can make an argument to move him up to 25 for sure. I got Tank Bigsby there, and Roschon. It just I was definitely a fan of him coming out, and I love the situation. But if you're not able to overcome subpar pieces ahead of you, like I like Khalil Herbert a lot more than Brad does, but Roschon should have been able to at least give him some pressure, move him out of the way. He's been unable to do that. He's been a little banged up recently. The other day was not a good look. That fumble was kind of an ugly play. He needs to look better. He's another guy that looked really, really good against second string people in the backup after the Bears were down 30. He didn't look as good when he got reps in the first half. And the other day he didn't either, especially when he fumbled the ball. So you look a lot better against the second string, third string guys than you do against the first string. That can be a little bit of facade, but hopefully he does improve. But I just think his draft capital puts him in a spot where he's still in danger of being replaced. Next year, Khalil Herbert's out of town, Foreman's out of town, Roschon Johnson's the guy. Then they draft a running back in the third round, and you're like, well, there goes that.
Yep.
So I think that you can move him up top, maybe in the 20 to 25 range, but there's still that concern of like, what's he done for me lately? What's the future look like? The Bears could be firing everybody. I just don't know.
Yep. 100%.
Anybody else before we go, Brad?
No, I think that's it. I think Roschon is probably the last one that really deserves a good amount of talking about. So,
all right. Well, as always, good luck this season. Happy Halloween. Trick or treat. Have a good one.
Cheers.